Hi there, and welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast. My name is Terry, and when I was 14 years old, I started making stop-motion animations in my bedroom using my grandpa's old camera. Ever since, I've been obsessed with everything to do with animation, and right now, I'm a student at Sheridan College. I created this podcast to connect with and learn from some of the biggest names in the industry, their best practices, the hardships they went through, and what to focus on to make it in today's changing animation world. It's my hope that by sharing this info that you too have the best chance of success. Now let's get started. Today, I am chatting with the amazing Humberto Rosa on how he became a lead animator at Sony Pictures Imageworks, where he recently completed work on the Academy Award-winning animated feature, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Humberto is originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina, where he studied animation in his hometown and completed the feature animation program at ianimate.net. And while he's got a background in traditional 2D animation, Humberto has also worked in advertising, television, and the gaming industries as a freelance generalist and 3D animator before he made the move to Canada to work in feature films. And currently, his Imageworks credits include Storks and The Emoji Movie, plus he recently won a VES award from the Visual Effects Society for his work on Miles Morales in Into the Spider-Verse. So, Humberto, first of all, congratulations on the VES. And how are you doing?
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to chat with you. And I got a whole lot of questions about Spider-Verse to ask you from fellow students of mine. But before we get into them, I want to know a little bit more about your journey on how you got here and what got you interested in animation in the first place.
Cool. Yeah, I think definitely the short answer is drawing. Like I've always I've drew my whole life. I always consider myself an artist. And strangely enough, I ended up working in 3D and I don't really draw for a living. But I always, since I was a little kid, I would draw everything I could find. And that's how sort of what I built my identity on. Like, I know how to draw. This is who I am.
What kind of things were you drawing? Were you drawing like TV show stuff or just anything?
Yeah, I think I started just copying everything I could see. I liked a lot of TV shows. I did do a lot of Dragon Ball Z, just straight up copying what I was seeing on the screen, which is great because there was so much like maybe over stylized, but a lot of anatomy on that like kind of trained. I think if you draw that kind of stuff, it trains your brain into thinking about human anatomy a bit more than if you're doing like I don't know, Ren and Stimpy. But yeah, I think I started copying everything I liked on TV, like Looney Tunes and even like Disney movies. And eventually just that led onto just doing my own stuff and trying to apply that into my own kind of characters.
Did you like create your own little TV shows and stuff when you were a kid?
I did. I wish I had any of that still.
Yeah.
Maybe my mom does. But yeah, I did create like a bunch of weird characters, and I had like my little sort of fake comic books and episodes and stuff. But yeah, those were not that much successful, I would say. I did find more success when I was doing stuff that people knew. So people were like, "Oh, this is really good." When I did my own stuff, it was like, "Oh, it's all right."
Oh, no.
But yeah, so I feel like that was my entry, I guess, my entry drug to animation. I knew I wanted to draw. I knew I was interested in that, and I knew I liked anime. I didn't consider it like a proper career choice at the time. Like it didn't feel like something real that people did for a living. But I did know I wanted something related with drawing. And then I kind of grew up and I became terrified of drawing. So I feel like a lot of the choices I ended up making were just out of insecurity, if that makes sense.
You mean like terrified, like you were scared of failure type of
absolutely,
thing?
Yeah. Because like I was always good at it, which I don't know if that happens to everyone, but in my experience,
I feel like it's a pretty common shared experience.
Because yeah, like I was a little kid who was good at it, so like every most grown-ups I would come across. They'll be like, oh, yeah, this is very good. When you grow up, you're going to be an amazing artist. Oh, when you grow up, I want to be your manager. I'm going to, whatever, save this drawing you just did. Because when you're famous, I'm going to sell you. It's just stupid.
Right.
It's meant to be a compliment. It's not meant to be anything else than that. But that piles up over the years. And once you're a bit older and the actual choice of a career became a real thing, all this sort of pressure became a real thing too. It's like, oh shit, now I have to live up to the expectations of all these people. Like, that lady saved my drawing to sell it when I'm successful. Now I have to, do something with my life. And I wasn't like, I never really studied drawing. I just did it because I was kind of intuitive with it. And so when I was like around 18, 19, and really thinking about, do I want a career in this, I didn't have like proper training, so I didn't feel like I was prepared enough for it, which is also dumb, because that's like, I don't know, that's the time where you start getting training. It's not where you should know every secret about the craft. But I was just, when it became real, it stopped being a hobby, I guess. It stopped being something I enjoyed. Every time I did it, I had the pressure of like, oh, this is not good enough. This is never going to be good enough. So I took a little detour. As soon as I finished high school, I started studying advertising, which didn't last long, and I realized I didn't want that at all.
So you
But I
got
did
through
work.
like a year or two of that?
Yeah, a year and a half, I think. And I worked as a freelance storyboard artist for ad agencies. And I worked as a like just art direction assistant in some production companies working in advertising. So I got like, I studied it, and I realized I didn't I didn't like it from like a theoretical point of view, and I worked on the industry a bit. I realized I didn't like that industry either. But everything I learned from those, I think it was almost 2 years. Like, I dropped out of school earlier, but I kept working for another 6 months or something. And everything I learned from that, I did end up putting to use, because I worked as an animator for advertising for a long time after that. But basically, what I said before, like, I feel like a lot of the career choices I made throughout the years, until I realized I was doing that, were just out of insecurity. It was just out of, I'm scared to do something that I don't know. I'm scared. Like, I think I want this, but it's scary, so I'm going to do this other thing, which is less scary, and I feel like I can manage. And luckily, that didn't deviate me too much from my actual goal. But looking back at it, I kind of feel pretty dumb about just not noticing that every choice I was making was just like out of being scared of doing what I really wanted to do.
Right,
I
but
think,
I mean, I very much have that same sentiment, and I don't think you should feel dumb. It's more like you needed to go through that state to get where you are now and take it seriously. Like, that's something I experienced too, going to business and having the insecurity of never wanting to do art because it was too scary, and now I'm finally tackling it too. Like, so that resonates a lot with
yeah,
me, I mean, I can't tell you not to feel dumb, but
yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah.
so how did you reach that point where you were like, you know what, I'm going to take this seriously? Like, what kind of emotional, or did something happen, or, did you meet somebody? How did you change mindset about this?
Yeah, that was totally during I studied in iAnimate, and
Right.
iAnimate was like my big change in mindset, to the point where like I suffered through it. Like, I wanted to quit animation while I was doing it. Like, it wasn't an easy and lovely experience, but in the end, it did teach me that, doing what I wanted was harder. Because basically, I was never like, I had worked for about, I guess, 4 or 5 years in Argentina, mostly as a freelance generalist. And again, my mindset of, I don't really want to do the things that are too hard was, well, I'm animating right now. I'm working as an animator. I don't feel my level is up to the, it's where I want it to be. But maybe if I just do this for like another 10 years, eventually I will be like, I will have 10 years of experience, so whatever, I can just keep doing this. And that's not how it worked at all. Like, you can, kick a ball against the wall every day for 10 years, you're not going to become, Messi. Sorry,
Right.
that was the most Argentinian example I could ever have given you. Like, uh, I don't know what's a more international sports example, but
Yeah,
anyway, let's
right.
say.
Well, we
But
have hockey here, so.
yeah, I don't know any hockey, man. I'm sorry. um, but yeah, it's like
Wayne
you can
Gretzky?
practice. What was that?
Not even Wayne Gretzky. Sorry, I'm
Mm,
deviating here.
I sincerely apologize. I've been living in Canada for almost 4 years now, and I have no knowledge of hockey. Like, I went to one hockey game, and I don't even know the rules. So yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, all
I'm too
right.
much
Well,
of an
you're forgiven.
Argentinian to know anything other than football. But anyway, my point was, like, I had that idea that if I just did, like, if I stay within my comfort zone and the little things I knew how to do, and just project that over the years, eventually I'm going to be great. And that's not how it works at all. But I did have that goal of eventually, like, okay, someday maybe I'll work in feature film. Someday maybe I'll do this. I will be at the level that I want to be. It's just not going to happen overnight, and so I just have to keep doing it. So I enrolled in iAnimate kind of with that idea of, like, uh, animation is not that hard to me. I'm doing things that I feel comfortable with. I'm just going to take this course, which is, taught by people who are actually working on the movies that I wish I was working on, and just get the knowledge from them, get better, and move on. Like, I didn't think of it as a big challenge. And then I started on it, and it was a huge challenge because, like, I don't think I had ever, like, no one had ever challenged me to, like, do my best possible work before. Because I studied animation in Argentina, but I studied it's well, the Argentinian educational system is a bit different from the US. But let's say I went to college, which is kind of similar to. So I did take. I did go to school for animation, but it is one of those programs where you get, like, the whole picture, right? And your end thesis is like doing a short film. Um, so you don't meet the animation needs to be decent. They're not pushing you to be, like, the best possible animator you can possibly be. They just want you to make a short film that's presentable in every sort of department, and so I did. And when I was working in advertising and some TV stuff, which is a different kind of challenging because it's usually quantity over quality. As long as the quality is okay, they will usually prioritize you meeting deadlines, which are already pretty tight. So it's not about doing amazing work. It's about doing consistently acceptable work on a tight schedule. So by the time I got
Gotcha.
to iAnimate, I thought I knew how to do the whole thing. I thought I only needed, like, to put my mind to it and get a little bit extra practice. And it turned out that wasn't the case at all. Like, they were really pushing me, and like, my first assignment, I was struggling to barely meet the minimum, um, and it got, like, really frustrating really fast. And my first
What was that?
reaction,
So sorry, let me just do a little
yeah,
recap.
no, go
So
ahead.
you went to animation school and you came out with a very generalist skill set and you made a short
Yeah,
film and you thought, this is I really like to animate, and so you started your you had like a 4 or 5 year career as a freelancer working for advertising studios and whatnot, and their animation was a little bit easier because there was just a certain quality threshold and you kind of passed that, and then after that it was just quantity that you had to produce. So
yeah.
then you went to iAnimate, and your first assignment, what was that first assignment that you feel like you were just meeting the minimum requirements? Because it sounds like you had a pretty good, like a lot of experience, professional experience, and as well like developed skill set from school. So what was that first project that kind of grilled you?
I don't think that first assignment was in itself, like, I think it was just like like character pacing from side to side. So basically, you got, like, uh, in character with some emotion, just walking side to side and just looping that, which is doesn't sound like a hard thing at all. Um, but I was aiming, like, I wanted that to look like a freaking Pixar movie. You know, I wanted that to be like, oh yeah, this is like, I've never had the time to actually polish something to the level of it looking like Disney. But now I do, so I'm gonna do it. And when I tried it, it failed completely. And I wasn't used to doing a lot of very anatomical characters either. Like a lot of the stuff I was doing in ads was just you know, cartoon characters with a lot of squash and stretch. Sometimes like, this is a little animated drop of detergent talking. It's not like a physical complex being with all
Right.
these controls and all this anatomy. That, you know, you can cheat a lot of things when you don't have that much structure in a design. And as long as your spacing and timing, you know, are nice to look at, you can get away with a lot of stuff that's really wrong structure wise. But if you start messing up the structure of a very anatomical looking character, then yeah, it just looks wrong. It just looks like broken, and you know, you need to feel like the anatomy is connected. And yeah, so I think I had high hopes for my own performance as well. Like I was really convinced that as soon as I could get the time to just not think about anything else but the quality of the animation on a shot, then I would just do it and it would be great. Um, and it turned out to be the opposite. Like I was putting so much pressure on me doing an amazing job that it ended up being super hard. It was hard to begin with, and I was just frustrated that I couldn't do it as well as I wanted to. Um, and yeah, and that led me to basically almost wanting to quit animation, because I before I animate, I basically quit my job so I could be a full-time freelancer to manage my own schedule, so I could take I animate freely. Because in Argentina, because of the time zone difference, the classes were like at 2 a.m. in the morning or something.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I really wanted to be able to take advantage of it. And if I had to wake up at 8, you know, after having taken a lesson at 2 a.m. and then work all day and come back and do my assignments, and I knew I wouldn't be able to just squeeze every last drop of knowledge out of it. So I quit my job and I went full-time freelancer, so I could just manage my own schedule and, you know, work at night if I needed to, and just do my own thing, so I could prioritize I animate. Um, and I wasn't, you know, doing anything that I felt was worth it. I felt like I was not taking advantage of it at all. And I realized that I started doing a lot of like scripts for the rigs and posting them on the website, and like mods of the rigs, and like helping out classmates, because like whatever, someone was doing a shot with the character wearing a suit and the character didn't have a suit, so I would model a suit and rig it and give it to them. And like I was spending all my time doing stuff that wasn't animating. It was technically I animate related, so I didn't feel guilty like I was procrastinating, but it was definitely not animating my shot. I was just wasting time doing other stuff to feel like I was, you know, oh, I'm doing all this I animate stuff, and I really wasn't. So eventually, like I didn't do it. Like I think I spent a good couple of months doing shots that I was not happy with, and looking at other people's work, and everyone else was doing an amazing job.
Because you were
And
helping them.
um, maybe, but yeah. So I got to the point where I was sitting at home, not feeling like like opening up my Maya file, and just frustrated, talking to myself, going like, why the hell? Like you have the privilege of being able to quit your job, put all your time into this. This is the thing you say you wanted to do. You have time for it. You have like instructors who are working in the stupid movies that you want to be working on. They're giving you the knowledge. Like, why are you spending your time doing a tie for someone else's shot? Like, what? Clearly, I'm not an animator. That was my train of thought. Like, if I have everything I need laid in front of me, and I don't feel like doing it, then I'm clear that this is not what I'm meant to be doing. This is not my thing. Um, and it took me a couple of weeks of just being in that sort of mindset of just being frustrated and thinking about doing something else, to realize that whenever I posted like a script on the website, people will go like, "Oh wow, you can script. That's amazing. Look at you." And whenever I post my animations, people will go like, "Yeah, that's great. You can change this and you can fix that." And I was just, just hungry for a pat on the back. I was just trying to get someone to tell me I was good at something because I was just frustrated with my animation not being good enough. Um, and and when I realized that, first of all, I felt like utterly embarrassed and dumb, but it kind of it unlocked my brain in a lot of ways. Like I realized uh, basically all of this that I was saying before, like how much throughout my entire artistic career I had just been making choices out of insecurity and just like shaping my path by avoiding what I felt was too challenging or too difficult, and then like moving on to this side. Oh well, this is a bit more comforting because I can do it and it's not as hard. And I still had the ambitious goal in mind, but I never really took a proper step towards it. Um, and I feel like I animate because it was uh, like it was a thing that I couldn't avoid. Like I knew I wanted to do it. I knew it was the best chance I had of a proper education from Argentina without moving abroad. Like I knew I had all this sort of things that I needed from it, um, that I couldn't just get away from it. And it led me to sort of that realization. And that moment when I realized, holy shit, like I'm just procrastinating, just trying to get someone to tell me I'm good at something instead of actually getting better at animation. Um, that changed my entire sort of approach to art, I would say. Um, and I think that was by the end of like my first workshop with them. All of the work I did on that workshop, like it was good enough to like move on to the next workshop, but I think it's just average at best. The first shot I ever did after that moment wasn't the reel that got me into Sony. Like it was that big of a change, that I was able to just not worry about insecurity and not worry about, oh, I might not be good at it, or not worry about anything else, which is actually taking the information, taking the classes that I was taking, think about my shot and not think about, oh, this is the shot that's going to be on my, like I don't care about anything else. I just care about the work that I'm doing and making it work. um and yeah, that was a huge game changer for me.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds really amazing because I mean, I feel it a lot of the time, insecurity with art, and I get a lot of people saying the same things, because you are putting some of yourself out there, and feeding off the likes on Instagram and whatnot does
Yeah.
bring some sort of happiness. um, but I think it's really interesting that instead of choosing what you were getting external validation for, like when you were working on, you said the rigs or the
Yeah, I
script,
was
sorry.
exactly, yeah.
Um, because I can see one path where you're like, well, people think I'm good at scripts, so I'm gonna specialize in that. But you wouldn't have gotten into character animation if you did that.
Yeah,
So,
and
um,
I'm pretty sure that if I had like taken a workshop on scripting, I would be frustrated that I'm not scripting as good as everyone else, and I would be posting my animations, hoping people go
right.
like, "Oh wow, you're great at animating." Um, but yeah, that was, yeah, I that was my first thought. Like I thought maybe like I'm doing all this rigging stuff. Maybe I'm a rigger. Maybe like I do like
Right.
animation. I want to work in the industry and just not an animator. Um, but but yeah, I feel like that's one thing that's been consistent though throughout my artistic career, which is I've liked a lot of things. I've done a lot of things. I mean, I worked as a generalist, but the one thing that I always that I never got bored of was animation. I have my ups and downs with like rigging and scripting and modeling, and I'm always drawing, and I have some times where I'm drawing more, drawing less, but I'm always uh, I'm never bored of animation, which is kind of what led me to understand that I was an animator. Like I never don't feel like animating, except for that one time in that I animate. I never don't feel like animating, um, which is yeah, that was my reason for saying, okay, no, this is my thing, animation. I like all these other things, And I do some scripting at work sometimes. I do work with Pipeline, and I do enjoy it quite a bit. But I know I'm an animator just because I it's the only thing I don't get bored of. Yeah.
Well, I think that's great, and the realization of what you want to do is something that, I mean, it's kind of the dream to also understand that and then work on that. So, being in the animation kind of industry and being surrounded by other people who aspire to be animators, it's like a very common theme because it's such a hard industry to get into, and the technical skills you need take a long time to really work at. So if you become bored, then you kind of just drop out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how you got Sony, because you finished iAnimate in 2014 and then you got picked up by Sony pretty much right after that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can you share how that went?
Yeah, it was actually it was much easier than I ever expected it to be. But basically, yeah, I got my iAnimate reel ready, and that same year I went to CTN Expo in Los Angeles, and I showed my reel. Like, it was the first time me showing my iAnimate reel around, and I basically just shoved it on everyone's faces, like, "Hey, here's my reel." Like, whoever I would run into, I was just showing it. And they do have like recruitment booths. So I
Right.
showed it to like every big studio that had any recruiter in there. Um, and I think I was lucky because Sony was hiring like crazy for Crunch Time on Angry Birds, and I think they were starting to sort of build up momentum for a few shows that they had lined up. So it was a good time to show them work because they were really hungry for new people. Um, so I showed them my reel, which,
So
by the
you were
way,
in Argentina at this point still, or
I
you
was
had
yeah
moved?
I was living in Argentina. I flew down to LA just for CTN, but I
Right.
was still living in Argentina. Um, and by the way, like the I don't know if that made a difference uh, for my interview or not, but with the recruiter, like one of the things that stood out was that I was also a rigger. Like the fact that I
Hmm.
animated, but I was also a rigger. She was like, "Oh, this is interesting. Let me give you my call." Like that was a sort of a selling point. Um, which, yeah, in a way that I can come back to that afterwards. But like, I feel like a lot of the things that I chose because I didn't want to do the thing that I wanted to do ended up actually helping out. Like all of my advertising past was knowledge that I used in my animation day by day, and I like a lot of stuff that I learned as a generalist paid off to land me a job as an animator as well. Which is lucky because I could have spent my time doing stuff that wasn't really helpful for animation, but it ended up being pretty
Right.
helpful. Um, so yeah,
So,
I got an interview with yeah.
oh, no, no, continue.
Yeah, so I got an interview with them. It was for Angry Birds at the time, and I didn't think it did a really good job at it. Like, I finished the interview going like, that was, I guess, all right. Um, but they did call me. They made me an offer for Angry Birds. The problem with that was my visa wouldn't come out in time, because they wanted me to start like right away. Like I think in 2 months or something, and from Argentina, you need, I think, at least 6 months to get all the paperwork done. So I ended up re-interviewing for Storks, and that interview went really, really well. And I got hired for Storks, and I started like I think 7 months after that. So I spent like another 7 months in Argentina just freelancing,
Right.
um, and then I flew over here for Storks, and that was a pretty. I mean, that was the beginning of everything, really, because that was Storks was my first feature, and I was lucky enough. I think because of that whole like Angry Birds Storks sort of mix up. I studied on Storks when it was a very small team. I think it was like 20 or something, which made it much more easier to get noticed. It's a small
Right.
team. You have a lot more, one-on-one time with the director and the supervisors, and it's not, you're not a single small animator in a sea of 100 and whatever doing crunch time, which would have been the case for Angry Birds. So I think that was pretty lucky as well. I mean, not that I wouldn't have stayed in Sony if I had gone to Angry Birds, but I do feel like it was really, really helpful to just be on that small team for Storks. Um, and I got along really well with the animation supervisor, Josh Beveridge. He was the same supervisor for Spider-Man. So that whole thing kind of played off really nicely. Because after Storks, he got me, like right away, he got me into doing the first early tests for Spider-Verse, because he
Nice.
liked my work in Storks. But again, that whole thing wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been in Argentina and my visa was just a mess
Right.
to get with.
What was your role on Storks when you first started there?
I was an intermediate animator, so I don't think like your actual, like if you're a junior or a senior in Sony, I don't think it counts that much. As long as you're doing good work, you're gonna get good shots. It doesn't limit the kind of shots that you get. Um, so yeah, I was an animator. I did a whole bunch of shots on it, and I did help out with a few um, sort of library work and just designing stuff that they need sometimes, like which is kind of in a small percentage is kind of the work of a lead, doing libraries for people and establishing design rules and stuff like that. So I did get like a little taste of that in Storks, um, which I think it was just out of my own, like, because I had a solid 2D background and drawing knowledge. I didn't find it as hard to basically think about 3D in 2D, which is kind of what I feel like really helps out a lot if
Yeah.
you're working, especially if you're working in a show that's stylized, like not being limited, not thinking limited by what the controls can do, but just what the design should be. Is a major, it's a major plus.
So I have like a million questions, but I just want to rewind a little bit. So
Yeah,
you created a demo reel coming out of iAnimate, but you already had kind of a portfolio and demo reel coming out of animation school the first round, right? So what
yeah.
was the big difference in your two like demo reels? If you could line them both up and watch them, what would you say is, you know, what makes them so different?
Well, I think it's mostly um, all my pre-iAnimate stuff was very um, mechanical stuff. It was like this guy can move stuff in a way that it's believable. They have weight. If they're cartoony, they have some interesting motion. But there was no real sense of character and performance in it. Um, when my animate reel, I feel like the stronger thing in it was the acting choices and was just the performance. It was just other than being well executed or not, I feel like it was interesting because that's usually the thing that helps land you a job the most. I feel as a student, like if we're looking at reels for Sony, like if you see someone who might not have the best execution, but you have amazing ideas and clear understanding of character and who the character is and why they're doing what they're doing, and like if you're delivering a line, why is he or she saying that line, and have specific absurd mannerisms of how they move, like that kind of stuff. I feel it was really present in my iAnimate reel, and absolutely completely missing in my older stuff. I think my older stuff was just things moving in a entertaining, pleasant way, but it didn't go any deeper than that.
Gotcha. So it's like you have the technical skills, but not necessarily the fluidity of personality in your work, which is, I guess,
Yeah,
really great to have.
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
Now, I just have a question about the freelancing, just because I know I was talking to one of my classmates and they're interested in this. So, how exactly did you go about picking up freelance jobs? Because, you've had like more than a decade of experience of working kind of gig to gig. So, how did you pick them up exactly?
Yeah, that was, I feel like my own, like my Argentinian experience of freelance work might not be like a direct correlation to what Canada or the US might be, because I feel like it was almost exclusively like the norm for people to be working at studios and at the same time have some sort of freelance gig on the side.
Hmm.
Um, so that's how I got into freelancing. I my first job as an animator, as a 3D animator, was in a small studio, and like I was working with a couple of animators, and they were all doing freelance stuff, and they would be like, "Hey, I have this, whatever, this small show that I don't have time to do it. Do you want to do it? It's just like it pays kind of okay, and you can just do it like on the weekend." And I started like, layering a couple of those small gigs here and there as I was working in that studio, which eventually, like, I didn't do it in an attempt to become a freelancer or to build, a list of clients or anything. But eventually, I did get a few clients that knew me, and I did get some experience doing it. So when I started doing more and more freelance, it kind of like I don't feel like I ever had to really fight for it. I mean, fight for like to get clients and to sell myself and to find people who wanted me to do stuff for them. I felt like with the stuff that I had already done, it sort of kind of fell into place, and it wasn't that hard to find new clients. I did have to learn how to. I think the hardest thing for me was to learn how to be a freelancer in the sense of not letting people just basically rip me off and have me
Right.
working way too much for way too little, and basically learn to be a little bit of a producer, to manage schedules, to actually know what a decent schedule looks like, and what's achievable, what's not, and to be able to project in a meeting like, hey, this is gonna take way too long, or you're asking for way too much, or to have that ability to anticipate how hard something would be or how long something would take, and to be able to actually um, have a strong opinion about that with a client, which sometimes can be pretty intimidating, especially if you're like a 20-something-year-old as I was, and you feel like you just need to say yes to whatever they're saying or they'll fire you. Um,
Right.
so learning that I could actually just sit there and go like, no, this is how we do it. Like you're hiring me as a specialist, so take my opinion and go with it. That was a really hard lesson, and I had to go through a bunch of like really tough projects of very late nights and long weekends, just
Were
because I
you
didn't have the
killing yourself?
yeah yeah
Are you
and just because
still?
I didn't have the skill for it.
Yeah. Are you still freelancing?
I'm not. No, I don't have the time for it. I Yeah, and it's weird though, because like I feel like once I got to Sony, um, I feel like in a way I was freelancing a lot. Like I was overworking myself because I didn't feel like I was still getting where I wanted to be. And once I got into Sony, that sort of insecurity of like, oh, you're not good enough, kind of went away
Yeah.
in a way. So I didn't have like the pressure of like, you're wasting time on a Saturday watching TV when you could be working,
Right. I
So
don't
that
currently feel like that yet.
that's good.
I'm still using everything
Sorry.
I have to work away on this. So I wanted to follow up with you about that from before. So do you feel like you reached your goal? Because before you said you wanted to work on feature films and stuff. And if you have, when exactly did you feel like that? Was it when you first started working on Sony or what?
Yeah, I feel like that goal always, like it keeps getting further and further as I go along. Like there was a time in my life where I could, like, I dreamed of just working on feature films, like, and I didn't even think that would be possible, because that kind of stuff feels very distant from Argentina. And I didn't even know if I wanted to live abroad like it is. Um, so getting to actually work on feature films in itself, that doesn't matter which one, um, felt like a big, bucket list life achievement goal for me. But at the same time, like my first day at Sony, uh, it felt like quite the opposite. Like this
Hmm.
is like your first day. Now you have to actually do the work. You haven't gotten anywhere. I mean, you did, but at the same time, um, now you have to actually do it. Um, and eventually, I guess that goal became, oh, now I want to be one of the good animators in the show. I don't want to be one of the, one of the ones that's just doing like, I don't want to be getting crappy shots and just doing background characters. I want to be actually doing main characters. and that eventually happens. And like once that happens, well, I wish I was a lead, or now I wish I was, it keeps getting further and further away as I sort of reach it. So I feel like I've reached past goals, and I still have newer goals in my mind. Um,
So what's
but
the newest goal? What are you working towards now?
that's a good question, actually. I feel like, well, my first, I definitely want to try to recreate what Spider-Verse was, experience-wise,
Hmm.
um, because I learned a lot from it. I grew a lot during that show, and now that it's done, and now that like the whole thing is kind of um, dissipating, and I'm working on a new show, like it's hard to go back into the mindset of, okay, let's start from the beginning. This is a new thing. Forget everything. I mean, not forget everything, but it's a different style. So it's get Spider-Verse out of your head and move on to something else. And I really want to be able to uh, not be locked in that one thing that Spider-Verse was, which I feel like can be really easy. Um, and I think I eventually want to try to do my own stuff. I don't know when I have the time for it, but I do have the long-term goal of eventually doing my own either short film or whatever that is. That's something someday I'll create. I don't even have an idea for it, but I know I do want to be able to have some further ownership on something.
Yeah, I mean I feel a lot of people have that, dream or goal is to do their own thing. But I was going to ask what's preventing you from doing that, but you said time already, I guess. So,
Yeah.
um, do you think you'll feel like you finally made it when those people that you gave those drawings to when you were younger sell them for a lot of money?
Maybe. I mean, I have to check that they still have them. So it can be
Yeah.
very disappointing, once I come to them as a billionaire, go like, hey, you can sell your drawing now. Who are you?
Right. Oh my gosh. So, as you were kind of upgrading your skill set and going from background characters to main characters and whatnot, what were the skills that or opportunities or how did you get from point A to B? How did you start with working on background characters to work on the main character? Like what did you have to do to get there? Other than
Hmm.
have this really ambitious goal in mind, but like was it a technical thing? Was it talking to the right person,
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I don't know at first. Um, when I first started on Storks, I mean, I started doing just I think the first assignment they gave everyone on the show, because it was early on and they was just trying to figure out the characters. The first assignment was just do one action with Junior, the main character. Um, however you want it. It was just trying to get ideas from people, and have animators sort of pitch. Like they knew what the animation style overall was, but they wanted to try to get interesting stuff from the team. So the first assignment was just like I feel it was just sitting on a couch, or like something very generic like that, but however you want to do it. And I remember I did quite a good job with that, just out of being creative. Like I don't even remember exactly what I did, but I know the reaction was like, "Oh, this is really interesting. This is something that we could actually use." Um, and I don't know if that's like, I don't have much of an advice for that. I was just very happy of being on a show. I was just given a task of be creative, and I tried out an idea, and it landed. Like I think I've tried out many ideas on other occasions that didn't land too. So that was kind of just a good combination of things. And other than that, I feel like the because I started getting better shots and better shots in Stokes, and I didn't really know what I mean. I was doing good work, obviously, but I don't know exactly what led my lead and supervisor to give me best shots. I can say about um, my own experience as a lead. Whenever I saw someone who would plus a shot, I would try to give them more stuff so I could do better stuff. So basically, if you have a shot that um, it's not necessarily entertaining, or it's not necessarily a good shot, and someone comes up with something that pluses it and makes it actually entertaining, even if it's a small thing. It doesn't need to be writing the whole script. It's just like, oh, this is a very smart whatever acting choice. just to give you like a quick example, in Spider-Verse, in Aaron's apartment where Miles is visiting him, Aaron is heating up popcorn in the microwave, and there was a shot of Aaron just taking the popcorn out of the microwave, and it's just like the most boring shot you can think of, which is the character taking popcorn out of a microwave. And the animator, Leandro Martins, he was new to the show. I think it was one of his first shots. And I knew he was very good, but he hadn't really shown a lot of like amazing work in Spider-Verse yet. He was kind of getting used to our tools and Sony itself and the movie, and he came up with just like the most charming possible way you could take popcorn out of a microwave, and it was just dumb. Like it was dumb in a way that was simple. It wasn't a complex thing, but he made Aaron almost kind of burn his hand with the popcorn. So he took his hand out and then closed the microwave by punching it with a fist, which makes sense for a character that has a history of being a Muay Thai fighter, and he's secretly a bad guy who fist fights Spider-Man. So it was like a nice little thing of like foreshadowing stuff in the film, getting to know the character and what he would do from his own backstory, and it was just like this tiny little thing. That it not only made the character more interesting, it made the shot interesting, and it made a whole action that otherwise would be really simple. It made it, an actual great shot. So I feel like that is the thing that, at least to me as a lead, would tell me, oh, this guy needs more work. This guy needs to, be given the ability to expand on that. And I feel
I think
like
that's
that
a
might
really
have
great
been.
example.
So I feel like that's what I tried to do as an animator, and what might have led me and Storks to get new shots. But that's, again, it's hard to me to say, because I was just scared shitless.
Right. Well, that got you somewhere. So let's talk
did.
about Spider-Verse a little bit more, because that's all of the excitement right now, and it was an amazing movie, got an Oscar and all this stuff. So you were one of the lead animators. Can you just maybe go over your role on what you were doing on Spider-Verse and what the day-to-day looked like and your team and all that stuff, just for an overview?
Yeah, totally. So I was lead animator, one of the 9 leads we had, and that means for Spider-Verse, I think it kind of, Sony has sort of steered over towards that as a whole. But usually we didn't have character leads. We just had leads for sequences. So whenever a sequence in the movie was kicked off by the director, there would be one lead who would supervise that sequence. In Spider-Verse, since we had so many different characters and so many different characters with different animation styles, and it was just hard to keep track of what's on model, what's the right workflow for the tools, for like so many different things. We also had character leads, which means that you have someone who's the pinpoint person for a specific character, that lead will also populate the library, make sure that the character is on model, make sure to do all like the training videos for that specific character and the tools needed for that character, and that kind of stuff. So I was character lead for Miles and a little bit of Peter, and I was a sequence lead as every lead. Luckily, like, since I was character lead for Miles, I think I was by design. I got a lot of the sequences where Miles is just being himself. So I got to be a lead on sort of the opening sequence, and him with his uncle, and him with his dad outside the school, like all those moments of just Miles being charming and easy to sort of connect with. That was part of my big job as a lead on the film.
Nice. And oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, what was it like working with such a big team on these sequences where you have people, animating background characters, people designing things, all this stuff. So, how was managing that and motivating them and constructively criticizing them and, all these things that you were kind of leading?
Yeah. Oh, that was a tricky thing. We had huge teams. I feel like my way of managing the big team was just figuring out which, basically giving small supervising tasks to other animators. So like if I knew someone was really good at something, I would have him be the point or her be the point person for like whatever that was, and sort of start delegating and sort of outsourcing part of the leading to some of the strongest animators on the team. As far as motivation goes, I feel like we didn't need that. Like Spider-Verse was such an amazing project, and everyone was just so stoked to be on it that I don't feel anyone needed much extra motivation than just being able to just animate on this. It's weird because usually, I mean, you do want to keep people motivated. You do want to, like, if someone gets a lot of notes that mean like change everything you did, you do want to always try to have a positive approach to that, and try to help out the animators as much as you can, because basically the work of a lead is to help the animators do the best work they can, so you can help the directors by getting what they're asking for, right? You're just trying to get what the director wants and get what the supervisor is asking for, and help the animator have all the tools they can have to achieve that. So the more of a positive kind of approach you can have, the better. I feel like I've never enjoyed when I'm working with someone and that someone is just complaining about whatever the notes we got. And I'm talking about like animators, and even say like when you have lead and that lead might be like, oh shit, we got too many notes. I don't agree with it. Like, I get why that happens, because I many times don't agree with some notes. You might not be happy about some change that you might be getting. But I feel like as far as staying motivated, the more you can just keep a positive attitude and just go like, well, we're making a movie, and we don't know the whole of it. Like, we don't really know what's going on in edits. We don't know what's going on through the director's head, and we just have to make sure that whatever they're asking for, we have to trust that they know what they're doing, because they do, and just not be sort of locked into the contained little space that your shot is, and try to think about like the bigger picture. And sometimes that's pretty hard to do, because you might get attached to the shot because you did something that you really liked, and then it gets changed or cut out of the movie. But yeah, I feel like, again, with Spider-Verse, it was easy to stay motivated because every time we got a screening, well, screenings were a bit trickier because for some time the movie as a whole wasn't really working, but we all knew it was fucking cool. Sorry. And we all knew, like, regardless if it's a good movie or not, this is gonna look great.
Yeah.
So that was still like, yeah, there was
So
constant motivation.
you said it was kind of easy to work on in a sense because it was so innovative and fun to work on. But I mean, you've had a very long career doing a lot of different things. Was there a big difference in kind of the collaboration and whatnot you experienced on Spider-Verse and other studios, or where people were maybe not so motivated, and what did you do then? And I don't know, maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like, collaboration wise, in Spider-Verse, it was pretty great because so much of the style was intertwined between animation and lighting and comp, and like so many things. Usually we're a bit more isolated. Like, you do your animation, you publish it, and lighting picks it up and they'll light it. Like, there's only a little bit of conversation, but it's not like a constant back and forth kind of thing. In this case, we're like publishing 2D lines that they had to light and they had to color in a way, because we don't know the final colors of the thing. So we're coloring lines based on what we think the colors are. But then, when you got final lighting, they had to understand what the purpose of those lines were. Like, there was so much conversation going back and forth. That was pretty interesting, and definitely very different from any other show I've ever been on. And it took some time. Like, it was interesting to me as well, because like my first reaction for animation was like, oh, lighting doesn't understand what we're trying to do in animation, and they're just doing things and they're breaking their stuff. And after actually having meetings with lighters and sitting and conversating and talking, I ended up learning so much about lighting, and I ended up like appreciating their work so much more than I ever did before. And I feel like they ended up learning a lot of animation, and like it was, it went both ways. But by the end, it was pretty it's pretty cool to be on the show that really felt like our job didn't end after we published a shot, but we actually had to keep an eye out for lighting. And like we trained them to see what we were trying to see, and they trained us to know what we could and couldn't do. And it was pretty interesting back and forth. I feel that worked not just with lighting, but like layout and stuff. Like animation and twos with moving cameras is not an easy thing to pull off. So like we had to have the same meetings with layout and with cloth and CFX and everything that was simulations. So it was a very intertwined kind of production, which is really really rare. And it was cool. It was great.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that you say you still have to learn how to do all those things, even though Sony's, a very established production studio already, creating lots of feature films. So it sounds like the studio itself, like, learned a lot about this process, and hopefully the momentum continues and we keep seeing amazing Oscar-winning feature films come out
Yeah,
of Sony.
absolutely.
I know
Well, I
I've
don't know
talked to
about.
other animators, and they're all like, I hear Sony's doing good things. Maybe I'll apply there. So you probably got an influx of applications since the release of
Yeah,
Spider-Verse.
they should. Yeah. I don't know about Oscars, but I can't talk about the stuff that's being cooked, but I can tell you like there's some really interesting stuff coming up too. At least visually, I feel like they learned the lesson from Spider-Verse and they're trying to do other cool looking stuff. So hopefully we'll
Yeah,
get
that's awesome. I
new
mean,
exciting stuff.
from my perspective, animation kind of reached a point of saturation almost, where it just becomes more and more realistic looking.
Hmm.
And now, Spider-Verse kind of changed all that by saying, hey, we have all these amazing different styles of animation historically and from around the world. Let's do something, put it all together and make it look amazing and work. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Spider-Verse has, got an Oscar now. And how was that whole experience of hearing it nominated? And also you won a VES from the Visual
Yeah.
Effects Society. Can you talk about, when you first found out about that and how it felt, and then going to accept it and all those things? Like, can you share that experience firsthand?
Yeah, I mean, everything was pretty surreal. And then none of it was really expected. Especially not when we were doing the movie. Like we were just trying to finish it, which was difficult enough already. So actually getting it done, seeing it like finished and working so well, and then seeing people like it so much, and then like getting awards, like that whole thing uh, was pretty unexpected. Um, and seeing it, seeing back at it now, it makes sense. But like at the
Wait, so
time,
you never, like, during working on it, you weren't like, this is looking really cool. It's probably gonna win something. You,
not at all.
you
No,
never had that thought. You were just like, let's finish this.
I was just overwhelmed with so much work.
Oh yeah.
And to be fair, like I feel like there was a lot of risks in the movie, and there were a lot of like so many different tones living together. Like there were so many ways it could not work. So many ways it could just, that final balance could break, and it would just ruin it. I feel like it spent most of production knowing that it looked really cool, but just scared that it wouldn't work, rather than saying, "Oh, this is going to be amazing." Um, I feel like usually you take a few risks, and this felt like every single thing, every character was a different risk, which meant a different possibility of it not working. Um, and it's like, well, maybe the people who like the cool action stuff are going to hate Spider-Ham, or maybe the people who like, Spider-Ham are going to hate, I don't know, the more down to earth dialogue moments, and that whole thing. I could never really bring myself to believing it would work until I saw the finished thing. And I feel in a way that was kind of my own way of protecting myself from not being, I guess, too sad if it didn't work. Because that thing, a similar thing happened with Stork. Like I felt, I guess because Storks was my first feature as well, but I thought Storks would kill it. I thought Storks was amazing. It would like revitalize the industry. It was so great, and Storks didn't do well at all. And it was such a letdown when Storks came out, and like the reviews were like meh, and the numbers were like down. It's like, oh crap, and that felt so bad that I feel like out of just self um, yeah, just trying
Self-preservation.
self-preservation. There you go. Thanks. I was just trying to convince myself there's many things in here that people might not like. I love them. I think it's amazing, but people think otherwise. It's a whole new world once you release it to the world and the whole world sees it. Um, so and actually, I was like genuinely expecting a more divided sort of reception. I genuinely I couldn't see some people not being annoyed by some of it because it's just too many different things. Too many. Usually, people don't like whatever's uh, too different. You like, a little bit of different, but too different just feels like alien and weird. Um, but yeah, luckily, it worked, and it worked from like every sort of angle because it's also a good story. Like it's not just well executed and it looks cool. It also works from an emotional level, um, which elevates it, and actually validates that the visual style holds up because otherwise you could just end up with like a very nice looking okay movie, and that wouldn't really change much.
Yeah, that's fair. So, what one question that I kind of just thought of now was, how is it? So, first of all, some context. Like, my Instagram has over 1,000 people. So, when I publish something there, the maximum amount of people that are going to see it are 1,000 people. But like, what is working on something that is going to be seen by pretty much the entire world? Like, what is that experience like? Like, as you're working on it, even if even though Storks was not as successful as it maybe people wanted it to be, like, still everybody saw the posters, everybody knew about it, millions of people saw it in theaters, like all this stuff. So how is it working on, you have that experience where you're doing something for freelance for a commercial or something, and or doing your own thing that's going to be seen by a handful of people versus like pretty much everybody in the world.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like there's actually a line in the movie that got cut out of the movie. I think it's in the extras in the DVD of Peter telling Miles that he can't think about saving the whole world. He has to think about just saving one person at a time, which is kind of what I feel about this. Like I feel like if you start thinking about how many people are going to be seeing it and how many, how big the scope of the thing is, at least for me, that's very intimidating, and that kind of inhibits my uh, creativity in a way. Um, I find that to me, like the most successful thing to get my best workout is to just think of the specific shot I'm working on and just narrow it down to like the thing I'm doing at the time, and not really get um, all the pressure of the entire movie, let alone like the entire world on it. Because even sometimes you might be working on a movie that you don't think it's that great, but you still want to make the best possible shot you can with the shots you're given. So that's how I tend to approach
So you're
everything.
not you're not thinking like, I need to impress my supervisor or the director when they see this, or the person sitting beside me. You're just trying to think what is best for this shot that I can make.
Yeah, I found that usually whenever I try to actively impress the supervisors, I just do something that they hate. um, it is, yeah. It's just I
It's
remember
just
there was one time I felt like I wasn't doing good with lip sync. I don't know why, but I was just like I felt like my weak point was lip sync. Um, so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do the best possible lip sync I can, and I spent I think like 2.5 days just doing lip sync on a shot, and I showed it, and Josh was like, yeah, this looks great. Just finish the lip sync and you're done. um,
oh no, that's
which
that's sort of what you want to
uh,
hear.
and my very professional self said, yeah, of course, yeah, lip sync is super rough. I will get it done. Don't worry. And then I
Oh
just
my
cried in a
God.
corner for like a week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like whenever I'm really consciously trying to do something that will wow people, that usually doesn't work. I don't feel like that's the right approach, at least for me. I feel like the best shots are the ones where I can just freely try to think about what the character is doing, what he's thinking, or what they're going through, and just shoot some reference, and not be, not force myself into anything. See what comes out, have a plan, discuss the plan as much as I can. Usually, whenever I try to wow things, wow people too, you will go further than you really need to. Like you will say like, oh, if I show a blocking, maybe they won't understand how amazing it is. But if I show it done, and I feel like the best thing you can do is just be transparent, talk with supervisors and leads and directors, share your ideas, and that's usually when everything works best. Otherwise, you're being a little bit. I feel like you're being a little bit, I guess, egocentric by
Yeah.
thinking you can do something that's
So,
amazing and that they'll be impressed. Yeah, instead of taking advantage of the fact that it's a team and you have other talented people that might have good ideas, that you didn't even think of. So I feel that that's the best approach. Just no pressure. As much as no pressure as you can, and share your early work as much as you can, and talk it through with your peers. Have other opinions on it. And if you feel really, really strongly about an idea and you feel like it's not landing with your peers, you might still try to show it, and see if the director buys off on it.
right.
But other than that, I feel like the more you can be just open to other ideas, the better. Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of something we chatted about earlier, which was when you first started working on Spider-Verse, you felt very much like it was the director's film, but then as you continued to work on it as it came out, that and accepting the award too, it kind of changed things. So can you talk a little bit about, how that why you thought it was the director's film and how it changed?
Yeah. I feel like that was my idea before Spider-Verse in a way. Like, as an animator, you're not really working on your movie, you're working on someone else's movie. Um, I feel like that changed quite a bit in Spider-Verse because it was such a collaborative thing, and because like so many of the things that we did in animation influenced even the script. Like, it was such an ongoing, sort of back and forth feedback between so many different departments, that I feel like a lot of what the animation did and a lot of what animators did and what I did, had a much bigger impact on the movie itself, um, than than other shows. And even like seeing that happen, I feel like Spider-Verse was a very transparent production in a way. Like, everyone, we, we were kind of aware of the ins and outs of what the directors were going through, what the edit was going through, or like, um, which I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but on other shows I always felt very isolated. Like, I was doing my thing, someone else is doing some other thing, and I don't know what's going on over there. So I always felt pretty, far from the end product, and I didn't realize how much, the actual animation ends up influencing, and changing story and edit, and creating new ideas. So it did give me a big feel of, ownership over my work, and especially in Spider-Verse. I mean, it's a weird way because, winning the award, I never felt like it was an award for me. I mean, my name is technically on it. It was shared with three other nominees, with Julie, who was another one of the anim leads, and she did most of the early development work on Miles. And then Chad and Marcos were like, rigging lead and modeling lead. Because the award was for Miles as a character, so it was all the leads of modeling, rigging, and animation. Um, and I never felt like that was my own personal, achievement, because it was such a. I mean, Miles as a character is the work of a lot of people. It's this huge team that actually made Miles, who he is, and what he looks like. Um, but I do feel, again, because I was so, aware of everything else going on in the production and what the directors were, looking for and struggling with and trying to find, and what the story was, what the iterations were going. The fact that we were able to find, like, a lot of the stuff that we did on Miles, influenced his personality. And we found a lot of miles in animation, and that ended up affecting the script, and that ended up affecting, the movie. So yeah, I went back on that feeling of not feeling a big ownership on 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 the movie itself, and now I feel like I do have. Of course, it's not my movie, but I do feel like I've played a bigger role. And animation and animators have played a bigger role in it that I previously thought they did.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Now I have a whole bunch of questions from my fellow classmates, but one question I just want to ask before I get into them, because some of them are quite funny. So you were working on Spider-Verse for over 3 years, and you went from, and it's kind of early on in your maybe more studio feature film career versus the like freelancing career. So like, what is the biggest thing that you learned over that time that you think really enabled you to take advantage of the opportunities and do your best and become a lead animator? Like, what do you think is the biggest thing that you developed personally or professionally or technically?
Well, I feel like the biggest difference, especially from my freelance years, like my freelance years were all about setting boundaries for clients who wanted to ask for too much, and all my most of my work was just saying no. And I feel like it took me a while to sort of wash that off as I got into feature. And Spider-Verse and being a lead on it, it was the ultimate just say yes to things. They want to try this weird thing that no one's ever done before. You have no idea how to do it. Just go for it, and try your best. I feel like it kind of echoes back to that whole animate thing we were talking about earlier, where I think back then I learned to sort of embrace the fear of doing unknown things and doing things that are really out of your comfort zone and scare you, and that's a good thing. And I feel like I really that was a big lesson from Spider-Verse, like doing stepping out of your comfort zone is fucking scary, and it's never comfortable. And every time that you're doing something new, different, or even better than your current skill set, if you're pushing your own boundaries, it's going to feel uncomfortable, and you're not going to really know what you're doing, and it's going to feel weird. And there's a deceiving sort of comfort in stepping back into the things you do know how to do and just staying there. But that's not how you get better. That's how you stay in the same place over and over. So I feel like a big lesson from Spider-Verse was to embrace it, to just know that's there, and actually, in a weird way, I feel like I became a little bit addicted to the adrenaline of having something that's incredibly difficult, and I don't really know how to do it, and that moment of uncertainty is kind of exciting. But yeah, I feel like I did learn to approach challenges with a different attitude, I guess.
Nice. Well, I think that's really great, and I definitely relate to that staying in your comfort zone thing because of a little bit of my story of staying in business and then doing animation now, and I think that's really good advice. Okay, so I have a whole bunch of student questions. I've tried to condense them into common questions, and I think I'll just shoot them off. So first one, how do you feel about Kingpin running from the front versus running from the side? Because he's like a wall.
Yeah.
Animated that.
That was, Kingpin was one of those weird characters where the cool thing about it was since he's just a flat color, anything that happened inside that silhouette was kind of fair game, because they would then light him as a flat color, and they would it did get lighting and stuff, but none of the wrinkles and deformations and weird things happening inside that shape really counted. So you could do whatever you wanted, and it was definitely a tricky one. I feel like the best approach to Kingpin walking was to not show him walking. that was the the easiest possible way. Like, 'cause he was, in a weird way, he was the trickiest to animate when he was doing the most mundane things. If he was maybe fighting, that wasn't. It was still hard, and it was still tricky to get him to feel intimidating and have structure within a very abstract kind of shape. But just him going through a door, it's like just weird and always feels forced. So if you see the movie, I feel like most of the time we're just avoiding showing that stuff and just focusing on facial performance and a few physical actions. But most of the time, like if you see him like entering the room on the reveal, like the first time you see him in the collider, there's like a close up of the hand clicking the pen, and then there's like a shadow, and then you see his face, and you never really see him walking, because he kind of like if he's walking downstairs, it can look kind of goofy. So I think the best kept secret is that we don't show him walking too much on a front view or a side view at all if we can. And if we have to show him walking, I think the best way to do it is having do some other action, which kind of draws your attention to it instead of the actual walking.
Nice.
So yeah, that was a weird one to animate.
That makes sense. And I can't think of any other characters that are just a wall that I've seen in film. So yeah, it sounds like a lot of problem solving. Next, so I did get a lot of questions about like kind of the budget and constraints. This next question is, was the frame rate of the film because of the style or the budget?
Oh, 100% because of the style. I think it didn't help the budget at all. I don't know the numbers, but it might have made it even more expensive. I mean, we did have to like develop new tools and new publishing processes and like a whole new bunch of stuff just to have it on twos and to be able to sim cloth and hair on twos. So definitely not out of it wasn't cheaper and it wasn't easier. It was definitely harder and out of a stylistic choice. 100%.
How did you guys come to the decision to say we want it to look slightly choppy, like not so smooth?
I think that came out of the idea of pushing graphic style as much as we could. Like the whole comic book inspiration and the whole comic book look was there from the very beginning. And we did have some character redesigns, and our old characters were a bit more not realistic looking, but I guess steered a little bit more towards realism. So the twos was a way to break away from that, to try to if the idea was to have realistic, structured, anatomical looking characters rendered in a very stylistic way, then how can we make them move in a stylistic way as well, so that it doesn't feel like it's a rotoscope kind of thing? And twos was part of that idea, and then it evolved into bringing back some of the 2D aspects of it, some of the old 2D sort of tricks and the old 2D look, and that would be referencing comic books, because it's a 2D hand-drawn thing. So trying to make it look like a 2D hand-drawn animation, a little bit like adding a little bit of the texture of that and the flavor of that was why we put that in there. Yeah.
Nice, totally makes sense. My next question was the comic book type texture a choice from the beginning, so you just answered that too.
Yeah,
who is your? I know you animated Miles, but who is your favorite character to animate? Or maybe if you only animated Miles, who did you wish to animate?
Well, that is a good. I'm 100% team Miles. I'm Miles all the way. I worked on Miles the most. I enjoyed Miles the most. I love him as a character. I loved animating on him. I loved like leading sequences he was on. Miles is my man. Absolutely, yes. I love Miles. And I luckily I got to animate him a lot. I did some. I animated one shot with Gwen playing drums. I animated one shot with Peter, and I got to animate Stan Lee, which was a nice little treat.
Nice. I saw those on your Twitter. You posted those.
Yeah. So I don't know which character I wish I would have been able to animate.
Didn't you want to do like a little bit of 2D with Spider-Ham or something? go back to 2D stuff?
Maybe, you know what? Yeah, in a way, like, yes, but at the same time, I don't feel like I'm a big sort of cartoony guy. Like, I feel like we had so many like talented, crazy talented, like cartoony animators that I don't think I would have done any service to the movie, but like taking a ham shot for myself. Um, yeah, that's one thing that I um, it took me a bit to realize, but like I know I'm kind of I'm an acting animator. I'm that's kind of my thing,
Yeah.
and I feel like for a long time I always wanted to like be great at everything. That's kind of maybe what you think, you know, like, oh, my reel needs to have like creature and whatever and this and that. And I really realized that this is my strong suit. Like I can do fair, decent, presentable animation on anything, but I'm an actor and I'm definitely this is sort of my thing. So being able like Sony didn't usually have a lot of movies with so much performance on them like this one. So being able to work on stuff like that was just amazing to me. And I didn't like I was just so happy with being able to do that that I don't think any of the other cool stuff that was happening in the movie was catching my attention. You know,
Nice. What was your favorite character from the film story-wise? Like arc?
Miles.
Yeah, Miles again, obviously.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean,
he's a little artist. He's a little artist kid who's scared to do what he needs to do, and he has to come to terms with the idea of facing his fears. I mean, how could that not be more what I
right.
just told you like half
Yeah.
an hour ago?
What was the worst criticism you received on the film before it came out and was a success?
Hmm. So I think the would would you mean the worst criticism? Because if it didn't come out, no one has seen it. Like the worst criticism
Yeah,
as in
before it came out, like I don't know if that means like from a director or supervisor or somebody who saw it
gotcha.
at screening or something like that.
Yeah. Um, I feel like the worst criticism we had. Well, I mean, going back to the early tests before we even redesigned the characters, I did a test with an old design for Gwen, um, and the result of that test was we need to redesign the whole thing. So
Oh no.
I didn't take it personally, but we did some tests, and the answer was yeah, this isn't working. So that was and they moved me on to the emoji movie until they had shots to like new designs to figure out. So in my head, I was like, oh, I screwed it. I broke it, and now they don't want me anymore.
You knew you were going back on Spider Verse though, right? It wasn't like
I,
you were.
I didn't at the time. I mean,
Oh no.
because no one, I didn't even know for sure if it was happening or not. Because I
Hmm.
mean, at the time, like they didn't tell me much. Like, well, you're doing a test. It's not like they're telling you, well, now they're bidding, and the studio is. You have no idea what's happening behind the scenes if they're actually doing the movie or not. Of the like, there's so many things that can happen. So all I knew was I did a test, and they liked some of it, but most of it like it showed them what not to do in a lot of ways.
Oh, okay.
So
That's
they are redesigning the characters. And yeah, I mean, I knew that the supervisor liked me, and like he would. I assumed he would put me on it, but I didn't know for sure. Like, yes, you're coming back once we have this.
so how long did you work on the Emoji Movie for then?
I think 3 or 4 months,
Oh
maybe
wow,
4 months.
okay.
Yeah.
That's a long time to be ambiguous about Spider-Verse, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair too, like at the time, it wasn't Spider Verse as it is now. It was like
Right,
an
right. It
animated
was.
Spider-Man that, of course, I was very, very happy to be on, and I really wanted to be on that,
Do
but no
you
one
get
knew what it would
do you
be.
get
Yeah.
test requests like that quite frequently at Sony? Like, are they always sending out little pitches and tests to people?
Um, I think every show starts off with a little bit of that. I don't know, like this whole thing of like doing a test as kind of a proof of concept kind of thing, as like we are trying something new, so let's see how it works.
Hmm.
I don't think I think they do that with shows that have like specific new styles. But I don't know if that's like a very, very common thing. Spider-Verse is the only one I've ever worked on like that. And I
Okay.
feel like on other tests like that I've seen, we're already like the show has been greenlit and it's happening. We're just, finding it as we go along. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I guess
Okay.
sometimes.
The next question you've already kind of answered. It was just, did you predict the movie's success beforehand? So I don't know if you want to
Yeah,
add
no,
anything to
not at
that.
all.
Um,
Uh, uh,
oh,
no, I was just scared. It's 2 years of being frightened.
gotcha. Yeah. The next question is, what kind of witchcraft did they use to create the masterpiece that is the Spider-Verse? So, did you use any witchcraft, I guess?
I don't think we had any witchcraft. We had
Bad.
a
There
lot of
wasn't a
new tools.
department of witchcraft.
Yeah, I think they were available for this one.
Just really
Yeah, but
talented.
I can take a little bit of credit for a little bit of the witchcraft because I did develop. I wrote a couple of tools that we use in animation that I'm
Nice.
very proud of because my knowledge of scripting isn't up to like the pipeline department level, but I was able to do some scripts that we used. So no witchcraft, but some programming.
Cool. How did you come up with a final look while both being unique and practical from a budgetary standpoint? So I guess
Hmm.
were there times where you got uh, pushback and saying, this is too much, or you said you got a lot of yeses, so maybe that wasn't an issue, but I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like well, I don't have to deal with. Luckily, I don't have to deal with budget as much. That's on the supervisor and production. Um, I don't think we ever got like a no, don't do it. This is too expensive. Um, we did have like we did have some times where we were not meeting quota, which animation was just going too slow. The team ended up being the biggest team we ever had at Imageworks. Um, and I don't think that was the plan originally. But other than that, I don't. Luckily, my job is not to make it efficient for money purposes, but to make it look good, and
Right.
efficient for like production purposes in the sense that like every animator can do it, and we can have like um, a standard look, and people are not like having things look off model or like the style is all over the place. That's as far as uh, production ready I have to think about when I'm developing stuff.
Gotcha. Were there any concerns with some scenes being visually uncomfortable because of the style and everything? For instance, the final fight scene has like blobs and buildings and stuff flying around, and it can be very confusing as to what's going on, but it's also done very like you don't feel confused when you're watching it, but were there
Hmm.
concerns about stuff being visually uncomfortable?
Yeah, totally. And I think uh, most of the times it was just a lot of back and forth between because in animation you're not seeing the final look, you're just seeing things move in Maya in a gray sort of environment, and it's sometimes hard to assess whether something will be like really strobe a lot or smooth or whatever. So I think it was a lot of back and forth. I mean, there was a lot of concern about that because we didn't want people to have headache while watching the movie. Um, so there was a lot of back and forth between animation and lighting, especially at the beginning where we were like putting out stuff in animation, technically calling it done, but then waiting until it was lit and calmed to see how it actually looked and learn from that. And eventually, uh, yeah, eventually we knew the things that worked best and what kind of caused issues in lighting. And that final battle in the collider was a big question mark of like we think is gonna work, like it's worked in other sections of the movie, and this shouldn't be an exception, but at the same time it's really crazy. And I think it was just moving along um, with care and with caution and just trying to make sure that everything was working. But at the same time, we did it in like in quite a rush, so it was a nice little balance of get it done but make it look right, but get it done now, but don't break it, which was fun, not stressful at all.
Yeah, I can imagine. What kind of what kind of problem-solving skills or abilities helped you during the creation of the film? So I guess, did you do research? Did you look at other films? Did you reach out to like specialists, or I don't know, what was your problem solving process, I guess?
Yeah. I feel like we did look a lot into 2D stuff, um, 2D like flat shaded 3D stuff. We really did a lot of research on how other people solved um, stuff on twos, and even like just a graphic look, because it's not just about having it in twos that makes it look graphic. There's like so many other things that we ended up having to implement, like not having like a lot of arcs in movements, because it's something that you don't do when you're drawing it. Like if you're doing 2D, unless you're like James Baxter or Sergio Pablos, like you can't draw like half a degree of rotation on a head and have that drawing perfectly reflect that angle. You're just drawing like you're going from a roughly front view, from a roughly three-quarter view, and like in the middle you're just moving features around a bit, but you're never like perfectly doing the full rotation, because we don't have the drawing skill for that. But in 3D you can totally do it, and those perfect rotations tend to look very computery. So we analyzed a lot of that stuff, so we could understand what kind of stuff we needed to do, what kind of stuff we needed to avoid, and we looked a lot into comic books, especially for inspiration on smears and 2D lines and motion lines. Yeah, we did a whole bunch of research. As for problem solving skills, uh, I don't know if I had to like develop specific problem solving skill. I know we ended up relying a lot on just trial and error, and not trusting what our idea of what would work was before seeing it, because a lot of times we were just convinced that the right way to do something was X, and then until we tried X, we realized it didn't work at all. So I think we ended up relying a lot on just experimentation and testing, and actually making sure that even though you have an idea of how things are going to look, actually do it and make sure it does. And more times than none, at least my ideas of how things would work were totally wrong.
Hmm. I mean, that's sounds like you did a lot of things. Last question here. Because I mean, you're a lead animator at Sony, which is not, like, it's no joke. It's a very ambitious and, you know, I would say sought after role, because not everybody is a lead animator, and there's tons and tons of people who are trying to get into the industry every year and working their way up. So if somebody were to want to become a lead animator at a major studio, what would you tell them to focus on in their
Hmm.
career, no matter what stage they're in? Maybe like for me, like a student, or for somebody who's even working at a studio right now and trying to work their way up.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, of course, you want to be a good animator, because you want to be the best animator you can be. I think that a big difference, and a thing that helps uh, sell you as a lead, is just being helpful to your supervisor, because that's really what the job is in a way. Like the supervisor will have a team of leads, so that he can trust, or she can trust that will do the work for them, and carry a lot of the heavy weight, and to know that they can trust you by giving you directions, and that you understand what the idea is, and what the direction is, and what the style is, and you can just take it up from there and give notes. So I feel like it's really about being uh, easy to communicate, and just trustworthy. Know that you're not going to be, you're just going to be professional. You're going to take notes for what they are, and understand that your job is to make the movie better and to keep people happy, and you're not going to cause any issues with other animators. That's kind of like um, the main thing you need. I feel like just be positive, and understand that your job is to help people, either your bosses, or the animators on your team.
Nice. Well, I feel like I've picked your brain enough so far. Do you have anything you want to add or questions or anything do you want to add at this point?
Man, I don't know. I don't think so. I think we've gone through
Yeah,
like quite a lot of stuff. Yeah, no, this was great.
yeah.
Thanks for
Well,
thanks for
yeah,
having me.
thank you
Thanks for
so
asking
much
me.
for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time, and it's been extremely insightful, especially hearing, kind of the ups and downs of your journey and how not just you worked on technical skills, but also kind of your emotional state and how that kind of changed your work and attitude towards things. So this has been really amazing. I feel very happy to have had this chat with you. So thank you for coming on and being here.
Thanks, man. Yeah, my pleasure. It was super nice. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Great. Now, just before we go, if you would like to get in touch with Humberto, you can do so by adding him on LinkedIn by just searching Humberto Rosa or following him on Twitter, which is his handle is at HF_Rosa. And that's all for now. Thank you for listening. Okay, bye.